Yes, they're like. Very good morning and warm welcome to the fifth session of IFTI Innovation Challenge 2023 training series. The topic we'll be discussing today is not only fascinating but also highly relevant. Overcoming potential roadblocks during the ideation phase of your startup. And the speaker is Mr. Sanjay Sharma. It's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for today. With over 36 years of experience in strategic operational management and leadership, the CXO level executive has made a significant impact in various reputed organizations such as Tata Power, Alcatel Lucent, Telcordia Technologies, AT&T, and Hewlett Packard. Moreover, our speaker is not only a leader but also a key contributor in devising action plans and delivering management consultancy services. In the past 3 years, our speaker has also actively engaged in mentoring, angel investments, and supporting entrepreneurship, particularly in campus and Northeast regions, leveraging the offerings of India Accelerator. Furthermore, he has been instrumental in connecting corporates and governments with startups, creating a beneficial environment for all stakeholders involved. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished speaker, whose vast experience and commitment to fostering innovation and growth will undoubtedly provide valuable insights today. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. And I'm sure, all the students who are listening, they must be thinking, here's this guy who's this old fogey and he's going to teach us roadblocks about ideating. Let me add a few things which obviously nobody puts in the resume that you submit for such occasions or otherwise. I'm also a failed entrepreneur. So I want to make that very, very clear because I've heard a couple of your sessions. When you're a student, failing is a challenge. If you fail, your parents, your teachers, everybody goes after you. But in entrepreneurship, it's important to fail and to fail early. And I'll tell you a few things about my own career, which I found very interesting. So the first thing I decided halfway into my corporate career, I was doing very well, but I was getting frustrated, pretty much doing similar things in different companies. So one fine day, I decided I needed to be an entrepreneur. No idea what it was. Startups at that point of time, if you go back 20, 25 years, was something very new. In fact, hardly heard about in India. And I jumped headlong into that startup without really knowing uh, what I need to do, except I had an idea. That I was clear. I had an idea, and few of the things that I will cover today actually comes from that experience. Uh, Post me hanging up my boots, I decided I needed to. I wasn't successful. That was okay. I was kind of successful, not the kind of successful that I was looking at or I had set my sights on. So what happened was I came out of it. In corporate, you have these cooling periods. I was looking around to see what next. I actually joined a few of our friends. We worked together and we set up a company. That sounds very interesting, and it is interesting, where we said we will create technologies because all of us were technocrats by and large, and we create technologies that have a lot of impact. So this was already a thing that I started working on. And the next thing I was looking around to really look at, are there any support systems or ecosystems that a startup can look at, which would help that entrepreneur to take his idea to fruition. And interestingly, what happened was a friend of mine introduced me to India Accelerator. Now, I had no idea what an acceleration is. The first meeting with the co-founders actually gave me the first insight into what it is, and they had a similar experience. They had started off many companies, few were successful, few were not, and then they figured out they need to find out if you're an engineer, one of the things, and this doesn't, it's not against anybody else, but you try to find some logic in anything that happens. That's your training. Honestly, it's also your training in any education. So they also learned the hard way what it was that they were missing. Why were they successful in some, successful, not so successful in others, and a failure in few. So I've been actually very lucky because India Accelerator not only taught me uh, what needs to be done, also taught me what does not need to be done. So what is it that you should avoid if you really want to be successful? And although the topic is potential roadblocks while ideating or in the ideation phase, I think it's important we understand the entire entrepreneurship cycle. What is it that we need to do? And are these roadblocks relevant, not relevant? Should we be wary about it? And let me also just add before I dive right into the thing that my passion is talking to younger people, talking about entrepreneurship, and talking about ideation. How do you take an idea from let me say your dormitory or your hostel room filled with friends to the really next level? Now, luckily, I think most of you have a wonderful atmosphere where there are enough and more support systems available for you make taking that idea from just an idea concept to at least the prototype stage. And subsequently, also ecosystems have become mature that help startups uh, grow. Now, one of the pitfalls in startups is that everybody sees unicorns, right? So 100 unicorns, 1,000 unicorns, you'll hear that every time. And here you are, you probably launched, if some of those guys, some of you have already launched, and you don't see $1 billion anywhere in the horizon. The thing you should be very clear about is how you define success. And billions are probably 0.001% of the ecosystem that reach there. So don't get frustrated, disappointed, and say, you know what, I'm not going to even go down this path because I don't see me making $1 billion in this endeavor. So I think that's important for all of us to understand, for all of us to define where we want to be, and make sure we put in efforts to be there. The last, let me put it this way, lesson learned over time, and I'll refer to it as we pass along. No idea is great or no idea is terrible. A lot of us who are from tier two, tier three cities, or even from metros, look at an Amazon or Uber as the only things that are worth looking at. Mind you, India, we have more than enough people and hence enough problems that are there in tier two, tier three cities also, apart from metros. And if we address those problems, rest assured, you will actually not only solve that problem, make money, create employment, but interestingly, a lot of the problems that we face in India are just global in nature. So, once you have access to a system that allows you to project your solution to a much larger audience, sky is the limit, literally, right? So I think without much ado, let me now start on the topic itself or on the presentation. So pretty much going to cover a few things. There'll be repetition for sure, given the kind of sessions that you're going into. Uh, so I'll talk a little bit about the startup life cycle. We'll talk about ideation, potential hurdles, And if time permits, I do want to kind of cover 2 or 3 use cases that I have found interesting. Uh, and they are startups that are part of the India Accelerator system itself. So let's start with the cycle of startup. Now, one thing is sure, if you look at this, it looks like, it'll go from, it's a linear kind of progression, and you have to climb each step one at a time. Uh, Interestingly, there has to be iterations, and I'll cover that later. So you start with an idea, a concept, you actually see um, a problem, if you call it that, but I call it an opportunity. You sit together, you come up with various solutions, kick them around, brainstorm, and you say, okay, this is the one way we are going to move forward. So let me take an example, and it's there in the use case, but I'll just. So if you look at Uber as an example, they had an idea, or they addressed a problem that they saw. There were drivers on one hand, there were passengers on the other, and it was very difficult for one of the founders, I believe in New York City, to actually hail a taxi to go from place A to place B. So he said, and the drivers were not getting enough passengers. So people in India who are more familiar, at one point of time we had, and I presume some of you haven't even had the opportunity to see that. But if you needed a taxi, you had a local taxi person. You call them up, or you just go up to the taxi stand. And in the north, we used to say Kali Pili, but I think it's different colors in different places. So you'd go up to a cab stand, you tell him I need to go to so and so place. If it's a long distance drive, you have hardly any objection. But if it was short distances, there was enough and more pushbacks. From that to today, there are dime a dozen hail a cab options, each one catering to a different requirement. But you just need to basically get on an app and hail a cab. So concept remaining the same, problem remaining the same. There could be multiple solutions. The second one, of course, is validation. Once you have an idea of how to solve an issue, you validate it. You run it by friends, family. Um, you know, for example, even incubation systems. You have these hackathons, pitchathons. That's where a lot of validation happens because you have experts actually who sit around and validate your idea. And then you move to the prototype stage. Now, prototype stage does not mean that you need to really build a lifelike solution or similar to the final solution. You can actually come up with quick and dirty solutions. And just to give our own example or my own example, we actually created models, computer models. Instead of building anything in the hardware that would cost us money, we worked with brilliant college professors who helped us build prototypes, which were essentially simulations of uh, the solution, right? And that helped us revalidate whether it will work. And then, of course, there's a launch stage. You launch it, you actually go commercial. And for many of us in the from this is the biggest leap, if you may, from essentially an incubation stage uh, to the world at large. But in and therein lies the challenge, because this is where the business part of it kicks in. Many of us who don't have or don't come from business families, business, or if we are not innovative all along or entrepreneur, this is the most challenging phase, and a lot of startups actually start going southwards or not being successful at this stage. And this is where, honestly, accelerators step in, the ecosystem or steps in. There's incidentally a lot of support from the government, from various departments, but you've got to understand how they work. Um, and once you cross this phase, comes the next challenging phase, which is the growth phase, where you start growing. And again, if you are an entrepreneur, just remember that in every stage, your outlook has to be different. And then you move, of course, into the maturity stage. Um, for people who have a good grasp of, I won't say religious, but concepts that have been in India for very long. There is birth, there is sustenance, and then there is actually death, and that whole cycle repeats. Incidentally, if at any point you face challenges, you should go back into the idea and concept stage. You should go back a stage rather than just continue going forward. So let's look at ideation, and we'll talk about the definition, what is problem solving, what is the solution, and how do you validate your idea. So this is essentially just picked up from Google, but it's important to remember that ideation is the process of forming ideas from conception to implementation. So it's actually, ideation is a much more touch and feel compared to an idea. An idea could come to you, in wherever you are sitting or sleeping in your dream. Also, an idea can come, right? However, if you have to convert that into reality, you have to follow a regimented process. Otherwise, you will keep on. The human brain is amazing. You can keep on getting idea after idea and then get frustrated because nothing happens. On the other hand, if you follow a regiment or a process, you will actually take a relevant idea. Again, I'm focusing on the word relevant, to its legitimate conclusion, which is you can start up a company, you can do whatever. Incidentally, it could also be, forgetting the startup word. An idea is, if you're a mathematician, a scientist, or an artist, you get an idea, and converting it into something may not be business, but converting, honestly, is what the whole ideation process is. Um, so let's move forward. So there's a problem that is you think worthwhile solving. The one thing you have to be very careful about, or very passionate about, is being observant, is being curious. Many of us, things are changing, but Indian education, by and large, is still dominated by what we call rote. That is, you basically learn what you are taught. Asking questions nowadays is encouraged, but in our times it wasn't something that you would do. Your professor, your teacher would kind of get angry if you actually doubted or asked questions of what they were teaching, or you had doubts that whether it was practically or whether it was even logically correct. So I think you have to remember that curiosity, and being passionate about observing people. If you listen to, by the way, actors, the good actors will always tell you that they spend a lot of time observing people, how they walk, how they gesture. So and they don't do it for a particular project. They just do that more by instinct or by training, and that helps them when they actually get a role, because they tend to take parts of what they have observed and put it into the role. So the more realistic an actor, the better observer that actor normally is. So you see a problem and you say, okay, what's the problem? It's very important to put pen to paper, and write down what the problem you're trying to solve. And it should be ideally in one line. So the more cryptic or the smaller your problem solving definition is, uh, the better it is. That is, you have actually understood what the problem is. So once you identify the problem, you define. That's what I just talked about, and then you explore solutions. Um, Again, you can sit down alone, but at least my personal experience, and I strongly advocate that you should have sit down with your friends, colleagues, people who have different kinds of opinions from what you have. You don't at this stage want to be surrounded by people who will agree to everything you say. You may, it's a challenge, by the way, when people push back. But the better you do your brainstorming sessions, the better you will be at actually coming down or identifying which solution you are likely or should um, go after. And then you get into action, convert that into a prototype, into thoughts, and then you look back and say, okay, did I do the right thing? Is my validation working? Are people agreeing that the solution that I have come out with, A, there's a problem, but B, more so importantly, the solution they're happy with, they're willing to incidentally pay money for, because ultimately, when you are a startup, unless you start making money and profits, uh, you're not going to grow as a company, as a bunch of people. And this can go around like a vicious circle again and again. So I I I just want to kind of dwell a little bit on this. You have to develop an expertise in something. So let's take a commonly used thing. If you are a software or a coder, software person, coder, or even an architect who sits down and defines a problem, you have to really try and be the best in that business as far as your abilities go, right? So try, and then I have to kind of add this: entrepreneurship is very, very hard. It's harder than studying, by the way, because you are now actually going to deep dive. So, as a coder, if you see a lot of the people who are very successful, Bill Gates, whoever you name, were exceptional coders. They understood code. In fact, I met a person um, who was the who had written the code for Tally. Tally is a accounting software which was the go-to in the old days in India. And interestingly, this person was, I think, at that point of time in his late 60s or very early 70s, and he could remember every single line of code that he had written. To the extent, although he had kind of pulled back from day-to-day activities, his CEO and CTO told me that should they have a problem, they would actually ask him, "Sir, this is the problem we're facing. What should we do?" And he would say, "Go to line number 5,000. This is the problem that you have to solve for." Now, those are exceptional people, but it also means that you have to have put in that much of effort uh, while learning about coding. So, one of the things that I like to say to college students, and necessarily I didn't follow my own advice, is try and get every ounce of knowledge that you can get. Use the computer room, use all your labs to the maximum extent possible, interact with your professors, literally drain them of their knowledge as far as you can. All the second thing to do is don't become a recluse. You need to observe how people interact, because that for people would define, or that for you would define how your user interface should be. The third thing you should do is, and by the way, this is not in any sequence, so you can get to do that. Always look for future trends. Something that is available today. Yes, Google Maharaj is all over the place, but again, try and because most colleges and their libraries, the digital libraries, are very rich in content, and sometimes you can't afford to buy the magazines that they have. So go to the library, see what the future trend is in the areas that of your interest. What are the, for example, consultants talking about where the market is going, let's say for cell phones, just hypothetically, right? Incidentally, when AT&T started, they were the first people who came up with cellular technology. But one of the consultants told them that nobody in his right mind would use a phone while either they're driving, at max they would use it at driving, what not when they're walking around. And lo and behold, Bell Labs, which is the premium R&D of telecom at that point, they just gave up the patent and said, whoever wants to do it, do it. And other companies jumped in, spent money, and made a fortune. So it's very important that you actually look for future trends and not trend. You can always spot inefficiencies that a particular model or a particular solution has. Just as an example, uh, if you look at the retail market, you could call that inefficiency, but the fact that you have to go out and you have to buy things from a physical store, it has its benefits, by the way, and I won't downplay that. But people realize that if you sit at home and you are able to order whatever, uh, and it comes to you very easily, that's something you can actually solve for. Or there was an inefficiency when you went to restaurants, and you stood in queue, rather than why not order it at home, just hypothetically, right? And there comes a Zomato doing exactly that. Get rid of the middlemen, because they are normally run away with all the money. So if you're from an agri background, the farmer actually gets the least in that whole food chain. It's the middleman, because the farmer doesn't have an ability to store, let's say, let's take an example, tomatoes, right? That's really really costly nowadays. But the farmer would have actually got maybe at best 10 rupees, 5 rupees a kilo. The middleman who had invested in the storage and is able to take it out of cold storage is now able to, he's laughing himself to the bank because it's 130 rupees a kilo. So he's made a killing of 120 rupees. Obviously, he took a risk when he bought the tomatoes to start with, but risk and reward is what you get. It's not as if I'm advocating hoarding, but that's what life is. The last, I mean, few things you have to copy. There's no shame in copy. So if you look at all the cab apps, I think everybody copied from everybody else. So they found you find good things in one particular app, maybe something better in another app, and you are coming up with a new idea. Take best of both worlds, as long as those are feasible ideas. Last but not the least, you have to be passionate about what you're doing, because you will fail. You will fail guaranteed, right? If you don't have passion, then you will give up very easily. If you have the passion, you will again and again go back, and try and solve the problem with another viewpoint. You'll hear all the great scientists, the innovators talk about the fact that they failed 99 times out of 100. They succeeded once, but they carried on. They didn't give up every time. So in fact, there are all these things you'll hear. which your teachers may or may not like, that actually failure is a pillar for success because you know what not to do, right? So if you put all of what not to do, you will finally hit pay dirt in terms of, or gold, as they used to say it in the past, and actually get the right idea, um, and you will be the inventor of light, of telecom, of many things, right? It's not saying everybody will have that passion, but for sure you have to have adequate passion for that opportunity for you to carry it through. So again, I think if you look at it, some of this may be repetitive, but again, as an entrepreneur or a practicing entrepreneur, I think it's few lessons that I have learned apart from what I learned with various people. There's a problem, you come up with a solution, but always keep in mind the center point of this, which is the customer. There is nobody willing to pay for your idea or your solution, then you will be happy. You will burn your hard earned money, somebody else's money, uh, and that will be a tragedy, right? So it's extremely important to validate, to make sure you understand, take the feedback from customers. Many of us fall into a little bit of a pitfall where we tend to surround or do these customer findings with people who will find it difficult to say no to us, right? So friends, they'll all say, "Hi, you did a great job." When if you really ask them to pay for it, they're probably not, right? So you need to make sure you have a diverse set of customers to get your feedback. One of the things I learned while at IA, which from one of the sessions, was today it's extremely easy. I wouldn't say extreme, but it's easy to actually get customer feedback by leveraging the likes of LinkedIn, Facebook, create a group, WhatsApp group, share it with your friends, and get that feedback. Make sure you incorporate the feedback and then go back to those people and say, "Thank you. I've taken your feedback. This is the change that I made. Now, are you satisfied?" The sooner you do this validation, the better it is. And again, you have to look at the pros and cons. Make sure that if you've come up with an idea, so let's take an example. You want to create an so I'll give you an example of real life. This guy called me from somewhere in Uttar Pradesh, and he said, "Sir, I have a brilliant idea. I want to create Facebook. I've seen a lot of loopholes in Facebook, which is there, true. I'm going to fix all of that, and I'm going to do a better Facebook." And my pushback to him was, well, it's interesting. Do you know how much code? Are you a software? Do you understand code, etc.? And he said, not really, but I'll find somebody. I said, okay, that's great. Now you want to go head on with Facebook. Do you know what is their kind of budget for marketing? He said, I have no idea. I said, you know what? It's like you're an ant, you're trying to push the elephant. Uh, don't attempt to do this. Don't attempt. So here the cons way outweighed the pros. He was right. There are a lot of things you can add, things that are specific for the India market, but it's not a joke to create a solution or to go against the likes of Facebook. So be sure that you weigh the pros and cons. And a few things about the problem you should ask yourself: is this problem or is this issue a frequent issue? Does it happen regularly, or is it once in a year, or once in 10 years? If it's infrequent, then your chances of actually having a buyer or a set of buyers is going to be extremely difficult. The next thing is it common? Can I actually um, do this so that I can replicate it, duplicate it, and there will be many, many buyers. And last but not the least is this problem worth solving? This is something that we addressed before, but again, it's worth repeating. Make sure that it's a problem worth solving. So again, this is a oft-quoted example. What did Amazon do? If you look at Amazon, it's a very interesting story. They started off as a retailer of books, and essentially they came and said, you know what, we don't want to spend money creating a bookstore. Let's keep it all in a central warehouse, take orders online, and pretty much deliver. Right? Obviously, it wasn't as simple as that, but they solved for each of the problems. And today, where is Amazon? You can buy anything and everything on Amazon, right? You want to buy medical stuff, you want to buy tickets, you want to, Amazon Pay. You can do anything. And but what did it imply? It implied that they had always their ear to the ground. They always sought customer feedback, and they addressed it. And mind you, what Amazon sells on the US store and Amazon sells in the India store uh, is hugely different. Their pricing is different, the products are different, so they know exactly who to and what to cater to. So again, repeatable, but look at it from this perspective: is the solution that you have created unique, or next day somebody can copy it? If it's that copyable, then you don't have something called USP. What is my unique selling proposition? And as somebody who's done sales in the past, I can tell you, if you don't have a significant differentiator, the only thing that you will fight on is price, right? And somebody will come who will outprice you or will give a lower price, and you're gone. So it's extremely important that you have some unique differentiators, and the customer sees value in those differentiators. If he cannot put a value to that differentiator, it's as good as not being unique. So, can you protect it? Of course, there are IPR rights um, that you can file for, patents that you can file for. But as a startup, patenting is costly. Again, I have to admit that my company or our company, we've actually gone for 15 patents. Now, remember that each of us, on an average, have worked 30 years in the corporate, so we do have what we call a nest somewhere that we could call upon. But more importantly, are you able to ring fence, or are you able to give the customers such a unique solution that they uh, they don't leave you? Just to give you an example, there are multiple applications where you can buy medicines online, right? And they'll give you schemes, but majority of the people still go to their local pharmacy because there is a comfort level in that interaction. There is a level where you can go back and ask, you know what, I have a stomach ache. What do I really need to take? And they actually become your advisors, friends. So they have created that environment where they will not be completely. And if they don't create that environment, they will completely be finished by the likes of whatever, whichever company, Tata 1MG, or whatever. Earlier we used to give Farm Easy, but today uh, that's a that's not a good story to give. And then, is it sustainable? So can I at least imagine that for the next 5 years, this solution will stay the course? So let's look at hurdles to ideation. Now, one of the things is ideas in general come from a conducive environment. That means that you are free, you're mentally not stressed. You can sit there and you can, you get some ideas. And And people get ideas, by the way, in the strangest of places, right? They could be sitting on the beach, um, and if you don't mind, they could be sitting on the toilet early morning, and they suddenly become highly inventive, right? So they get some idea. Or you could actually get some ideas while you're sleeping, because people say that if you've noticed a problem, you keep thinking about it, go to sleep, your subconscious brain actually works on it. And next morning you can wake up and actually have an idea saying, oh, this is the way to solve it. If you look at a lot of the genius mathematicians, they would actually apparently dream about it, keep a pad next to them, and write down immediately after waking up what is it idea that would solve the problem. So it's extremely important that you create for yourself and for your friends a very friendly environment where exchanging ideas are are encouraged. Nowadays, if you see in the corporate world, brainstorming is something that is a tool or a mechanism of actually looking for solutions to a problem. And normally in brainstorming, you will come with, let's say there are 10 people, at least 10 different ideas, if not many more. And some of those people will be people who think completely out of box. Uh, and as, let's say, the person running that brainstorming session or that ideation session encourage as many ideas as possible, then go through a thing of prioritizing, saying, okay, we got these 10 ideas. I think these two actually meet all the matrices that we've talked about. The next thing is goals. Again, you learn something. Probably people who are management graduates will know this, or people who've taken elective management courses. It's very important to have a specific goal. What am I solving for? What is that solution outcome going to be that is measurable? And then I can actually say, yeah, I met my goal. So let's say your goal, just hypothetically, and it's got nothing to do with startup. Your goal is to, you say, you know what, my goal is to cycle. That's not going to get you anywhere. I mean, just getting on a cycle, maybe do 4 or 5 steps, and you say, oops, I've met my goal. That's a really vague goal. But if you set yourself a goal saying, I'm going to cycle 10 kilometers every day, that's a very specific goal. And you know when you met it or you know when you didn't. The third point is very similar to the first. There are many of us, and there's nothing wrong with it, who are close-minded. We don't like new ideas. We don't like change. So when we sit in these sessions, we kind of shut ourselves off and really don't contribute to the ideation. And that, by the way, changes the atmosphere or changes the dynamics in that room. Because if there's one guy who's sitting there, you can make out from his non-verbal communication, his or her non-verbal communication, that they have a very dim idea of what is being discussed. Pretty much, that would be a problem. Now, the other thing is, all of us, many of us would have seen how sheep work or any cattle work. There's an alpha male or there's a herd mentality. So one person takes the lead and everybody follows, right? There's nobody saying, oh, no, 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 this route is not good. Let's go the other route. And I don't know whether you are in the habit of watching movies about wild animals. If you look at what is known as the Great Migration in Africa, where I think 1.5 million or 2 million, maybe three, sorry, 3 million wildebeest migrate from the west of the country to east. So basically, go through Tanzania into Masai Mara and come right back. Now it's interesting when they have to cross a river, the Masai River, I happen to see this, you know, there's no leader first, but whoever decides to take that leap of faith and just take the first step into the water becomes the leader, and everybody follows, right? Interestingly, there are crocodiles who've been there for this migration, and everybody knows that. The wildebeest know and the crocodiles know that there is a risk, but they follow the leader. So I think if you be like that, but there'll be another group that suddenly decides to take a detour and takes another route. So so they have probably a bigger chance of success. And there are other people who like to please. So there will be one person who's like a leadership quality, and everybody else likes to say yes. And that's something that you can see as an example in the political world, where there will be one leader and everybody else will be yes men or yes women. There's ego. So if I have an idea, I will say my idea is the best. My solution is the best. Why should I even listen to anybody else? And that, unfortunately, in life as well as in the entrepreneurial journey, is a big challenge. There is one point that can go one way or the other, which is inexperienced teams. So let's take an example. You're in the first year in college, or maybe nowadays, by the way, entrepreneurs I've seen at the school level. Um, but when they get together, come together, the team is not does not have really any experience. So let's say, we want to create a platform which is a software platform, hypothetically for e-commerce. Now, there's nobody out there who really knows anything about how to create that platform, how to scale that platform, how to do, let's say, integrity testing of that platform, etc., or validation. Now, that team's probability of success is very low. And one of the things that I personally advocate is that when you're in college, get your faculty involved, get seniors involved. If you really believe in your uh, problem or you really believe in the solution that you have, uh, they will add tremendous amount of value and maturity to what you're doing. It's great to have a lot of energy. It's great to do that, but you have to temper it with reality at times, right? Uh, Sometimes, like I talked in the beginning, it's important to think out of the ordinary. It is think out of the box is something which used to be a very cliched management principle, but it essentially means that you have to unlearn what you have learned probably in school, etc., where you are actually taught to only think in a particular way. So if you think out of box, um, the example, by the way, is if you see horse-drawn carts in the past, for people not or for the horse not to get confused, they used to put these kind of mask around their eyes so they could only look straight, not look right or left and get distracted. And that's what straight jacketed thinking is about. You can't be an entrepreneur with that kind of thinking. You have to be flexible. You have to think out of box, um, and you've got to take that leap of faith, saying, "Yep, I can do it." Last but not the least, and this is good and bad, uh, is pessimism. Because you sit there and say, you know what, yeah, Mukesh Ambani has made so much money. How I can't even imagine thinking about, how will I become a Nadani? How I'll never be. So forget it. Let me do a job and be happy. Let me look for a job. Now, the last point I do want to say out here is that, and I think we're running out of time pretty shortly, but I'll take maybe 3-4 minutes more, is that don't be over optimistic or over pessimistic. Try and be on the middle path. And the only way you can do that is to surround yourself with a very um, good team of people who have a mix of both. So if you look at successful industrial houses, and I always kind of uh, have studied them from very close, you actually find, two brothers, let's say they start a company. One is really a guy who's optimistic, has got crazy ideas. And interestingly, there's be another brother, and they have tremendous respect for each other's abilities, by the way. And you have to have that. The other one is saying, okay, this is a brilliant idea, but let's see whether it'll work. Let's see the monetary or the business side of it. And so that mix is a very potent mix. So one is so make sure your team actually has a mix of such individuals. Now, there are two use cases that I quickly want to kind of cover. One is this called Cab Bazaar. Now, very quickly on this is it was started by two individuals. They decided, they were they were facing personal problems in booking a car or a cab, especially for long distance. And the problems they identified were A, they didn't know the driver, the condition of the car, and sometimes, the driver would take the thing, and the charges were uh, frankly some things that got negotiated over time. So it was there was an uncertainty. So they decided one fine day, let's kick it off. This was the idea. So they sat. They had one phone, and one of their friends, and they called a couple of friends and said, you know what, we've started this business. So interestingly, they had nothing more than just the idea. So a relative of one of those founders actually called them and said, I need to go to place, let's say Kanpur. I need to take a cab. Right? It's a long distance. Um, Please make sure. Can you get me a cab? And this guy said, sure. But remember, he didn't have a taxi. He didn't have anybody. So he calls up his the cab guy that he normally uses and says, so you know what? I have a passenger who's going to go to Kanpur and back. Um, do you have the good driver? And he knew the car, so he said, I need a good car. And the guy said, yeah. So he said, okay, what's the rate? So they gave a rate. They said, okay, because I'm giving you, I think you need to give me some finder's fee. We kept it small, and realized, oh my God. Now, interestingly, by uh, word of mouth, it spread. And at that point of time, he was writing requests on a piece of paper. So the first thing they did was converted it into an Excel sheet. Now, interestingly, what happened was, so it was going pretty decent business. It was growing pretty fast. Now came a huge hurdle. COVID hit them, and people stopped traveling. And the next thing they knew was their business was going down the tube. Now, interestingly, they were part of, and again, this is not a sales pitch, but they were part of an acceleration program. So their mentors actually came and told them, you know what, you've got a very good idea, but I think you need to, there's a word called pivot. You need to change what you're doing, just the mode of what you're doing. So they did two things. In the interim, they built a website with the help of some mentors. And B, more interestingly, they actually thought, what's the business now like? And one of the mentors told them, you know what? Nowadays, nobody's doing a round trip. So they want to go home. They're going from place A to place B, and that's it. And the cabs were charging two times because they were taking the round trip fare. So it was becoming rather costly. So these guys actually came up with this idea saying, okay, let's find passengers who want to go from A to B, but also find passengers who want to come from B to A. And the moment they figured this out, they were actually able to charge lower, save maybe the customer 30%. They got passengers both ways. So they made actually better money than they were making on the round trip. And their business actually took off. So, did they fail? Answer is, if you call that a failure, yeah. What did they do? They dusted themselves. They had mentors to help them. Who said, why don't you try something different? They tried it and it was successful. Similarly, bunch of young guys, they came here while they were doing internships. They realized getting a room for 3 months was a challenge. There was the short term, and they would come from different parts of Gurgaon. different parts into Gurgaon. And what they realized was that they had no clue, and they would just walk into any PG that either somebody told them if they were lucky, or they just looked around, saw some board, and they walked in, and they had pretty terrible experiences. The next thing they realized was that if they were sharing an accommodation, then it's very tough to get like-minded uh, roommates. So to give you an example, this is a thing that I've seen very closely in Bangalore. Uh, People take a flat on hire, and then two, three roomies get together, share the rent. It becomes affordable, easy to live, etc., because they can now hire a cook and somebody to clean. Now, how do you make sure that you kind of get along with the roommates, right? So these people actually came up and said, okay, let's do this. Let's rent an accommodation and then create a site, ask questions so that uh, potential roommates can tell them tell the at the site what they're looking for. It's like a matchmaking shadi.com, but for roommates. And this is how they actually took off. Now, again, in decade, COVID came, tough times. Um, they did some amendments, did a little bit of pivot, stuck in because they knew they were on a good thing, on a good problem, good solution. It was repeatable. They could do it in any city for that matter, because there was migration in and out of cities also. So I think these are the kinds of examples. This is what I wanted to talk about. Uh, and in conclusion, I do want to say that having hurdles or creating hurdles for yourself is actually good, not bad. Make sure that you are able to define the problem, find a solution, hit the customer validation. If it's not successful, it is extremely important to fail as soon as possible, because the sooner you fail, the lower the cost of failing is. If you carry it on too long, you've seen some of these big guys crashing because they maybe had a decent idea, but they kept on pumping money in, getting it from the VCs. When the good times are good, you'll get money. And then problems happen because they couldn't scale. And it's also important to remain grounded, right? So the moment you are grounded, um, don't run after funding. That should not be your objective. The objective is to find a repeatable solution which is viable, which is protectable, and more important, a business that is profitable. Suddenly, you find all the VCs have started, apparently, this is the month that minimum or for many years, less funding has happened. But I can tell you from my personal experience and being involved with some angel networks that for deserving startups, there's no dearth of funding. And a deserving startup today's world is, except for having brilliant dreams and large numbers, buying market share, it's is your business successful? Is it profitable? Do you have a roadmap that shows that you're going to be profitable in 1.5 years? Yeah, things like that, which is good old business principles, have come back um, to kind of rule out here. So I'm good. Selva, if there are any questions.
Yes, I have posted a few questions, 2 questions in the chat. Shall I read it out?
No, I'm kind of, actually, you can read it out, but I'm also reading it. So,
Okay.
no, you can go ahead, please.
The first question is, how do you prevent yourself from becoming too attached to your initial idea during the ideation phase? And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who struggle to pivot or adapt when faced with new information or market trends?
Okay, so there are actually 3 questions, because the first question is 2 questions. This is the biggest, how do you prevent yourself from becoming emotionally attached to your initial idea during the ideation phase? frankly, all of us are human. If we were not, we are not objective, and that's good, by the way. Now, but and it is extremely important. So there was one point I forgot, and I'll just probably bring it up here. Many of us in the college things are scared that if I share an idea, will somebody else copy it? But it's more important in my mind. If it's so easily copyable, it's a bad idea to start with. But it is implementation and not the idea. You get ideas dime a dozen. So how do you prevent yourself? The only way, in my opinion, you can prevent yourself from becoming um, too attached. I would actually use the word enamored with your initial idea. Um, in Hindi, I think the word is junoon. You think my idea is the idea and nothing else. This will happen if you're doing your ideation phase on your own. And if you're not actually following the process of ideation, if you don't have that kind of a team construct that is looking at, it should be experience, etc., what we talked about in ideation, but who push you back. Uh, and like I said, it could be people who are senior, who are your peers, uh, or let's say faculty members, because especially if an idea is technically not feasible, the best place to go for advice is with your college professors. Frankly, nowadays professors do talk to each other, not just from a college, so you will get an access to other professors too. But that's, I would say, that whoever asked this question is brilliant because you've actually identified uh, the basic problem, which is why am I getting fixated to my initial idea, right? Uh, if you don't have passion, by the way, you will jump from one idea to the other. So you have to follow the process of that idea that I talked about to a logical end. And what advice would I give to entrepreneurs who struggle to pivot or adapt when faced with new information? So one of the things that I learned very early, I mean, I shouldn't say early, but in my career was there was this person who set up a company, and he was doing reasonably well. And somebody asked me saying, can you go and ask him, we want to buy his company. Now, I happen to know this individual pretty well. And my initial thought was, how the hell am I going to tell this guy to sell his baby? Literally, it was his baby, the way he looked at it. And that's what happens to entrepreneurs. It becomes your baby, your pet, whatever you call it. And I walked up to him finally after a lot of hesitation, and I said, "Sir, you know what? There's a buyer. Would you be interested?" And here I was expecting a pushback. And the guy looked at me and said, "Sanjay, I'm a businessman. If I'm getting value for what I am, what I built, absolutely, I'll go to another idea." So again, if you surround yourself, you will struggle. I mean, if you, again, anything that you do not logically sit down and really do brainstorming, but keep your open mindedness of how to pivot. So let's take an example. You have built a company which is based on, let's say you built a shop, and now somebody comes to you and said, you know what, go online. Now that's a good idea for me to give, but how would that person who's never even touched a computer go online? That pivot idea in itself is a strange idea unless whoever gave that idea also suggests a solution. So it's important that you again look and say, do I have the expertise to pivot? If I pivot, what are the things that are likely to change from my original assumptions? I need, once I pivot, I also, or want to pivot, I also need to make sure that I test the market again, right? So the fact that you're realizing these are drawbacks, I think, is the first step. The second step is to surround yourself with people who will help you and guide you and push you, if the case may be, to adopt or, more importantly, pivot. Pivot is a little bit more, it's like a 90 degrees change. Adopt is like 10 degrees, 20 degrees. So pivot, I think, is more challenging than adoption. Okay.
Yes, sir. There is one more question. How do you balance the need for speed and progress during the ideation phase with the importance of conducting thorough research and validation? Any tips for entrepreneurs who feel pressured to move quickly but also want to make informed decisions?
Okay, these kinds of questions are extremely mature. They don't seem to be coming from college students, but nevertheless, let me give it a crack. So, Need for Speed is used to be a video game, by the way. So yes, there is need for speed is important because every idea has a finite shelf life, right? Yes, so I do agree. There's a question of need for speed, but again, if you look at what the world teaches you, corporate teaches you, anybody teaches you, is you always have to do one thing, which is plan, do, check, act. The longer you plan, the faster the check and act will happen, or do, check, and act will happen. So it's extremely important in the ideation phase or in any other phase to be very careful and analytical in what you do. Look at the market, look at market validation, and constantly keep your antenna up to listen to what the market is telling you. If the market is telling you that you've launched this product, by the way, it's got 20 defects, you had it, because one bad customer will lead to 10 other people who will never buy your product, and the reverse is also true. So it's extremely important to make sure that speed, while it's a necessity, it does not become the tool to justify a half-baked idea going live, because that is more dangerous, will hurt you in the longer term. And importance of conducting thorough research and validation. Okay, so that, I think I addressed that. Any tips for entrepreneurs who feel pressured to move quickly but also want to make informed decisions? So I don't know who is going to pressure anybody. Um, uh, Most of the pressure you actually build for yourself. So so let's take an example, which I think people will relate to. Most VCs, when they come in with their big bags of money, insist that a company grows at a particular speed, right? Now, so you have an option that either you go for a VC funding. I'm just taking that as an example, and take the related baggage that comes with it. So the pros and cons are very clear. Lots of money to grow, but high speed of growth. And what happens? Why do you fall through the cracks? If the most likely is that your governance is not in place for a bigger company. You work with 15, 20, 25 people. You don't know how to manage 250 people. As simple as that, right? And you don't want to give way. So it's important to work at your pace, but be very cognizant about the fact that you and you only define your destiny. If you let the moment you let somebody else uh, ask you, or they let you, or they want you to play by their rules of the game, you probably lost it already. If you've not thought through, I'm just taking an example. Somebody says, launch into, and this is a recent example of a startup that I'm invested in, launch into 10 cities. He got money. We told the investors, I'm going to launch into 10 new cities without thinking it through. Guess what happened? It actually rocked the boat in terms of the financials, because nine of those, I think there were 9 out of 10 cities that were not profitable. And he had not really planned for that kind of bottom line erosion in his overall business. So, again, speed is important, but planning, looking at it, the more time you spend there, the faster you can execute without problems. So I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, sir. And one more question. I would like Mr. Dipan to answer to this question. Dipan, are you there?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the question is like from one of the nursing college, how Yukti is helpful for nursing students and faculty.
First of all, I will thank Sanjay Sharma ji for delivering a very good session on where somebody has, while your journey from ideation to startup, you have to think about and you should not take it just lightly. And he has rightly identified the bottlenecks and the concerns as observed by the experts and especially as a third person or the neutrally, how you will see and passing these important points to the innovators while working on their ideas. It is really appreciated and I thank you, sir, for your time.
Second, thank you, Dipan.
Yeah.
I think I should also call you sir, but I'll
Yeah,
speak to
no,
Dipan.
no,
Thank you
it's
very
fine.
much.
It's fine. It's fine.
I'm no bad.
Yeah.
If I speak the language properly.
Yes. And coming to the answer to the second question that is as raised by one student or participant from nursing college. So I believe there is one functional IIC, Institutions Innovation Council in their institute, and that's why now through Yukti Innovation Repository, they are part of this system. And your institute, that means your council, your innovation council at your institute has nominated your your innovation for this Yukti Innovation Challenge. That means your innovation has something, some plus factors, some factors that is actually giving an edge as comparison with other innovations from your institute. So let me highlight how this Yukti is going to give you benefit. See, this IIC, this Institutions Innovation Council established in your IIC, in your institute, actually giving a base and actually acting as an enabling factor in your institute to make the environment dynamic and vibrant. That means IIC ensures there is a continuous process of handholding, mentoring, awareness, and organizing series of activities throughout the year so that students, faculty members, and external experts will get an opportunity to come together, interact, and also share their knowledges, expertise, and involve in many expert talks so that our student and faculty will get multiple times of opportunities to understand this innovation entrepreneurship domain and they will start engaging. So this is the performance of IIC or the IIC's role, what majority of the institutions are doing. But coming to the Yukti is another top of another layer on top of the base. That means IIC is creating the buzz, IIC is creating the dynamic and the vibrancy and the system by taking student and faculty. Yukti brings the quality. IIC is trying to create the quantity. So quality means through Yukti Innovation Repository at your institute to reduce the redundancy efforts, to bring a one window or one channel system for creating the pipeline for the innovation, pipeline of innovations and startups and ideas at your institute level. Institute will know that how many individuals in your institute, be it a faculty or a student or incubated startups or enthusiastic entrepreneur, those are associated with your institute, how many are actually they are committed and in which stage of their value chain they are currently in. That means how many individuals are having ideas, how many individuals or the teams are individuals in the innovation stage of TRL, technology readiness level of 4 and above, and how many individuals are in the startup stage. That means institute will manage their resources in this whole thing very effectively because resources is limited, and with the limited resource they will know if out of 2,000 students those are part of the system or the part of the council, only 300 to 400 have the ideas and 50 to 60 have the innovation stage of TRL 4 to 9, and only 10 students or 10 faculty of 2 faculties have the reach to the startup stage. So they will know that where they have to now strike. So majority, as the majorities are in the idea stage, so their strategy will be how to upgrade them from idea to a innovation, and also they will come up with a new plan and activities and the programs to handle those are in the innovation stage to upgrade them to a startup stage. And Also, they will plan that how to deploy the resources, how to bring the stakeholders, how to collaborate with other incubators nearby, other agencies, so that those are in the startup stage, they will actually get kicked off and go to the next level of the growth stage of the startup. Also, they will manage to get the investors, incubators, accelerators, programs, all participate in various other competitions and programs organized by various ecosystem enablers. So if the innovation repository itself is trying to bring the quality aspect and reducing the me too kind of innovations, or especially as Sanjay sir said, that validation at the initial stage of the ideation level and providing proper mentoring and the guidance, so that the quality ideas will get refined, and with mentorship it will reach the problem solution fit, and then the next fit, like market product fit and business model fit, will be achieved through this handholding process, and then they will move were in the value chain process of innovation entrepreneurship, and Institute will able to create a strong pipeline of innovations and startups for the incubation unit exists either in the institute or in the nearby locality. So this Yukti Innovation Repository is a platform, is actually reducing lots of duplicate efforts and breaking the isolation, also giving the institute that actually see the committed individuals with their level of innovation and what kind of support system they will bring at the institute level, also outside the institute, and simultaneously through Yukti Innovation Challenge, that you all are part of the system program. You are connected with the ministry directly, and you are receiving this kind of one-to-one expert talks and handholdings. And through a series of evaluation, handholding, mentoring, gradually you will move and you will get access to the funding support from Ministry of Education and incubation linkage. So Yukti Innovation, being in the part of the Yukti Innovation Repository or Yukti Innovation Challenge, or any challenge your institute is going to float through this Yukti portal, you are going to access all this information right way in your login page. And you can, if you want to participate in any competition or any program, any training program on innovation entrepreneurship, need not to again submit your application. Just like LinkedIn, you have to just log in, and to a small edit, you can update your application and directly submit your nomination for that program or innovation challenge or competition. Is going to float at the institute level or the ministry level or at the innovation ecosystem enablers level, because we're expecting incubation units, acceleration units, investors, angel investors, and government agencies, state government agencies, even non-government agencies that are going to join. We are going to invite them to join as an enabler, to join as a partner to the Yukti Innovation Repository platform and IIC, so that all our student innovators, faculty innovators, ideation stage, innovation stage, startup stage, through their login, they will access to the information and the resources at the institute level, also across the whole country. All the ecosystem enablers are going to be part of it. So this is kind of a connecting the ecosystem enablers dots, and bringing the right and giving them a platform to connect with each other and with the interest they want to exchange of services and products or the kind of offerings. So this is the way Yukti Innovation Repository and Yukti Innovation Challenge is going to help each and every innovation. And as you are part of a nursing college, so definitely you have some technical understanding, and you have the management, and you bring the human behavior and values into the system. You can come up with new innovations, and you can take your innovations to the next level, or taking forward through this Yukti, with help from this Yukti Innovation Repository and being the part of IIC and Challenge.
Yeah, thank you, Dipan, for the answer. So in a nutshell, Yukti Innovation Repository, if you are the question asked by the institute, then the Yukti Innovation Repository will act as your own institute innovation repository, wherein all the innovators from your institute, they can submit their idea, prototype, and the startup level. So as an institute, you will have the entire information of your innovators, and wherein, as Mr. Dipan said, like wherein as a Ministry of Education's innovation cell, we are trying to bring in a lot of agencies in our platform. So we will be will we be adding like whatever the challenges from other ministries or other departments, and wherein you can just go and nominate the appropriate innovation to the particular challenges. The IAC Institute will help through series of workshops and seminars for this ICTI Innovation Repository. So this is the answer for this. Either it can be nursing or pharma or engineering, the innovations, life cycle, the startup life cycle will be the same. Thank you. And sir, just last one question. Should we protect the idea first by patenting it, or should implement first and then protect it? What is better?
So, Selva, is the
Yes.
question for me or Deepan?
Yes, sir. The question is for you, sir.
Okay, so very clearly, every idea is not necessarily patentable. But that being said, and maybe Deepan and you can help. One of the things that is a problem, there is a cost associated with patenting, right? And that cost tends to be, and I don't know if there are any schemes to actually to help. But I can tell you, we could afford to patent 15 because we had that kind of thing. Now, it's extremely important to make sure that it is a patentable idea before you opt for patent, because the patent exercise in itself can take about a year. I mean, for you to get at least the patent, although it gets published there. So I would suggest that when you are in, and by the way, I love this question about the nursing. I would really look forward to actually looking at those kinds of use cases, because we ourselves are limited in what we look at. But the thing I would say is play with the idea, get it into the prototype stage, and if the advice of your mentors, and they could be from your college also, or even from the ministry, if the advice is, hey, this looks like brilliant, you know what, just go ahead and patent it. I would say patenting requires time and energy, so it's extremely difficult for an entrepreneur to try and do both, right? To try and launch the business. So I would actually say, see how the market reacts, come out with the final idea that you're going to go commercial with, and for sure patent it. But that patent will give you mental satisfaction. Let us also recognize that there are very few of us or none of us who can afford to actually fight for patents. I mean, let's take an example. If you go against Microsoft, they will throw some 20 lawyers after you. Let's say, I'm just taking, the Sippels and the Salves of this world, and you're gone. So you would not like to do that, but for sure you should patent something which is unique, which you have done some prelim study on the patent side to figure out that there's nobody else who's actually filed that, and do it. But on a very personal note, I would say the better thing is to take your idea into a fruition, into prototype, into this, and come into, once you are okay, financially money is coming into the bank, for sure, go ahead and patent. If it adds value, don't patent for patent's sake. I don't know, Selva, whether that's the right answer, but that's the answer I would like to give practically.
Sir, as you say, that is the right answer. There are no more second thought on it. Thank you, sir. On behalf of Ministry of Education's Innovation Cell, I wanted to express my sincere gratitude for your insightful presentation on overcoming roadblocks to ideation. Your emphasis on real-life case studies like taxi booking, made easy, and best room is brought the topic to life and provided us with valuable lessons and inspiration. Thank you once again. Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much for having me on this program. I hope I did justice to the amount of time that you gave me. Thank you, and thank you, Deepak. Really appreciate it.